Steve Cattle competed at world level throughout the 70s and 80s. As member of both the KUGB and the British All-Stars teams, he represented Britain in numerous international events. Steve started training in the martial arts in the early 60s, studying judo under Dave Peake in York. As a judo second dan, he won the European Lightweight Championships and represented Britain in the World Student Championships in Japan in 1967. Steve also began to train in Shotokan karate in the early 1960s at the York Kenshinkan Dojo under Gordon Thompson. Later he joined the famous Red Triangle Dojo in Liverpool. In 1971, Steve became the first British Karate Control Commission All-Stars champion. He established his own dojo in Kirkdale and soon developed a group of highly skilled and motivated karateka. In 1982, the Kirkdale team won the KUGB championships. Although Steve could perform all the kicking techniques used in karate, he was best known as a puncher. His tournament career brought him many awards, including a Wilkinson sword, as well as a few hard knocks, as his forte of fighting at close range meant that he was sometimes vulnerable to an opponent's counterpunches. Steve was adamant that karate is more than a sport, and his stress on martial reality meant that he expected to give and take blows without complaint. In this footage of the 1974 KUGB Championships, which Steve won, Steve can be seen drawing an opponent in and counter-attacking at the critical moment. His tactic of slowly moving away just outside his opponent's range would often force his opponent to attack, so creating an opportunity for Steve to use daiwaza, or countering at the instant his opponent began to attack. Once in close, Steve would counter-attack ferociously, keeping much larger or heavier opponents on the defensive. Steve always challenged himself and strove to improve his skills in all aspects of traditional karate. He met and trained with many Japanese karate masters, but those who could trace their lineage back to Gichin Funakoshi, founder of Shotokan, held a special attraction. Here Steve, Andy Sherry and other KUGB seniors pose for a photograph with Masatoshi Nakayama, the chief instructor of the Japan Karate Association. Like all students of Japanese and Okinawan karate, Steve placed a high value on training in kata. As he became older, his knowledge and insight matured, a process encouraged by his long association with Kaze Sensei. Steve was skilled in all the Shotokan kata, and his fascination with the history and the evolution of karate led him to learn many of the older versions of the kata found in the Shotokan style. His performance of Hangetsu, or Half Moon, the Shotokan version of Seizan, shows the fusion of Nahate and Shurite techniques found in both the Shotokan and Shito-ryu styles. Steve demonstrates the combination of slow dynamic techniques meshed with fast punches and kicks characteristic of Hangetsu. This kata also features a unique turning movement not found in any other Shotokan kata, which indicates its origin in the older Okinawan forms. As Steve was able to explain many aspects of Shotokan in great depth, he was often asked to teach abroad. He taught in North America and throughout Europe. Here, he is in Sweden with his friend and fellow Shotokan instructor, Ted Hedlund. Steve's approach to karate is clearly shown in the following explanation of Hangetsu kata, filmed for VMA in 1988. His great sense of humour and his refreshing ability not to take himself too seriously is seen in some outtakes.
I'm going to perform today the kata Hongetsu, a kata which is common to both Shotokan and Wadaru, although Wadaru retains the original Okinawan name, Seizan. I feel it's a very neglected kata, generally because of the difficulty in performing the turns and its lack of beauty in stance. The point about Seizan is it's an inner kata in which you're feeling a kind of inner strength and flow of energy through your body, a quality which is referred to in Okinawan karate as stone technique. You must make your body not soft but hard like a stone. The actual name Seizan means 13 hands, but also the ideogrammic Chinese character also means the stone in the stream. When you're performing the kata, it's rather like fighting your way up a mountain stream slowly, fighting against the current of water. Also the turns, which are very, very difficult indeed, are rather like stepping from one rock to another, very, very carefully, avoiding being caught in any rush of water at the time. Hongetsu kata requires that you practice Hongetsu dachi, or Seisan dachi as it's referred to in Okinawan karate. This is in fact a variation of Sanshin. Sanshin, close stance. Hongetsu is enlarged Sanshin. Now, many Shotokan stylists perform it very, very tight. I follow my teacher, Master Kazi, and we open the stance a little bit more than normal. This is to get a greater flow and grip during the movements. All times during the kata, when you're doing upright stance, you do Seisan dachi. There are in fact only 3 stances in the kata: Hongetsu, Seisan, Kokutsu dachi, and Nekoashi dachi. The difficulty, as you'll see while I'm performing the kata at the moment, is the turn. I feel that's why it's neglected in competition karate as well as the actual stance difficulty, because when you're balancing on one leg, unlike a movement from, say, Gankaku or Shinto, where you can hold your balance, the actual flow of movement from one foot to another is very difficult to hold. This is probably the greatest technical difficulty in the kata, although it's very important when you come to do the bunkai. When you're performing the kata Hongetsu, requires that you tense the body from the inside. Now this is a completely different feeling from, say, Gojuru, where you're developing strength to resist punishment. During a Gojuru kata, you will be hit through the kata. This is called shikatsu. This allows you to resist with your inner energy the force of a blow which will hit your body. In Hongetsu, it is a very different feeling, a bit like the Chen style of Tai Chi, where the flow of energy must come through, so the actual movement and actual strength flows through the body into the hand. That's a punch or a block, and we must, during the kata, develop this skill. Part of the bunkai is to develop the skill at doing this. Now this requires that you breathe. The breathing coming is sharply in through the nose, then we breathe out, exhaling through the mouth. Now the feeling when you exhale is that 2/3 of the air you exhale from your mouth, 1/3 you sink down into the waist and hips, so that you've got an energy flow going both ways. When you get to the position where your hands meet in front, we inhale completely, and we exhale again about 70%, not completely. Again, feeling that the 30% we hold in reserve, pushing down into our waist. Again, we come to the upward hand movement. We inhale, and here we exhale again, but about 60%, sinking down, 60% out, 40% sinking down, so we grip inwardly with the hips. Now we have an exercise which develops this, in which as you go through the slow moves of the kata, you must feel this feeling of fighting through a stream of water. As though you're clawing your way upstream. You must totally disregard the movements of your partner. Your partner will sometimes push you out. As you start to force out, they'll push you back. As water would look for a crevice and search inwardly, your partner does that. So you must not tense either one way or the other. You must learn to lock in a consistent pattern with your hips and body. I'm now going to try and demonstrate this exercise with one of my pupils, Sandy Hopkins, third dan, who's been many times KGB national champion. It's probably appropriate that we've caught a bad day of Liverpool weather. It started to rain on us, but the actual kata hongetsu seisam was designed, in fact, to be performed on a wet surface. The techniques are designed to grip inwardly in a position where you would in fact lose your footing. Kata develops this quality of gripping inwardly. That's what you must get. This is the stone technique. The feeling that you're gripping inwardly with your hara, the lower stomach, the legs, the hips, and as you flow through the kata, although you're fighting things coming against you, you must be gripping with the feet, so your feet will not slide apart at any position in the kata. Now, what I'm going to do now is explain the actual movements done quickly. The quick movements, although are slightly different, they're performed technically the same, but the feeling is very, very different. When you're doing the slow movements, the grip is different. When you're doing the quick movements, it's got to be an instantaneous grip with your body. This is assisted by doing the kata slowly. Now, when you make the quick movements, you are trying to move inside your opponent and counter, and the counter must try and sink and penetrate deeply. The movements where you're in here is in fact a breaking action to a grip with the thumb, then performed by an ipponken, a double one finger's knuckle strike to the cheekbone, a very weak point. This is a defense against headbutts. The hand movements are blocks. They are not done together in the bunkai, they are separate movements. The other hand movements are a blocking position to kicks. Now, the whole point of this is, again, is as water would rush off you, you must allow the techniques to rush past. And the strength comes from that inner grip. You must almost challenge your opponents as they come towards you. The bunkai of the kata hongetsu is very staccato. It's a very old kata, maybe one of the oldest. We're not sure. It could be either hongetsu or gankaku, Chinto. We're not sure. There's debate about which kata came first. That's immaterial. The problem is that the kata is a sort of series of staccato movements that don't really flow. The later katas flow from one technique into the other. In hongetsu, we do a series of movements, immediately we switch to something else. Now the next series we make a sharp turn with kiai. At this point we make a double block, we block with the hands. Now the kata again, we do a simultaneous movement and catch. It's very subtle because actually again, in the kata when we perform it, the bunkai, it's done separately, 1, 2, and the actual catch is delivered very, very subtly. What we must try and do is catch our opponent's arm at that last moment, just before they tense, to pull them forwards. Again, we feel as though we're firmly rooted with the stance, and we use that to uproot our opponents and distort their balance just at the very, very critical point of their own timing. This requires that you are again in control of the situation. You are letting, again, the water brush off you. But again, as you pull them, you're distorting their thing and you're pulling them again, they're flowing through and past you. That's what you do. Actually, when you hit this, the thing is, you see, you tend to think fight. I'll try to delay you. But fights take place with walls around you, don't you? Somebody may throw a kick and a punch. The kata now goes into a series of inside block and double punch combination. This idea is called in Japanese awasewaza, double technique. The idea being that you hit the target area with one punch before your opponent can recover. You follow immediately with the second punch. It's rather like breaking a board. Sometimes you hit a board, it'll crack with the first punch. The second one will finally drive it home. The kata is teaching you a principle. Sometimes you may confront somebody, you may block them, you may hit them with your best punch and they're still coming. You must immediately continue before going through to the next opponent or the next step. A very important principle is the kata's teaching. The other thing, of course, is to consider things around you. You're blocking one, right, left, and then forwards. So you may be confronted with multiple opponents. Again, you deal with one before you go into the other. You may think somebody's down, but the kata is saying, no, continue until you're sure. Then go into the next series of movements. From here we go into the most difficult part of the kata, the turn using the ashiyuki, the leg block. This requires that you control the weight down and you bring the knee up, covering over. When you're actually doing the kata, the hand and foot should move together, with the hand being exactly to the center of your head. And you must try to control the movement down. In no time should you jerk down at the very end. It requires this inner control of your hip from the inside, and also this gripping action and keeping the back leg tensed and yet bent. This is a very, very difficult maneuver, not only in control areas but also in application. It does work, but in fact it does not work as the kata delivers it. The kata delivers it to a move from behind. Generally, it's a frontal attack. We would use this action, or a sideways attack. It may work to the rear, but it is very doubtful. I think probably the creator of the kata designed it purely as an exercise to give you technical control of your body. The bunkai of the kata is in fact to the front. Immediately this is followed with a follow-up. It's as though you block and counter your opponent and you follow them, you chase them. Again, this feeling of careful steps. You step carefully for two reasons. Number one, maybe your opponent may come, you could move back, or you could move sideways. It's an element in which you must consider, although you're going, you're following very, very carefully. And at this point, you must try, when you're making the kata, to keep the body completely still. There's no time must you jerk to the side. And again, we must try and keep down. Now, when we make the kick, the other important thing is, simultaneous with the kick, we pull back the hand to the ear. This is to say that we're actually blocking, or maybe our opponent's caught our wrist and we're pulling them in. Generally a blocking action. And as we make the kick, we pull back. Then as we land, again in the Hongetsu stance, we grip very tightly. This is followed with a counter, and again, a blocking action. This block could of course be a block, a pure block, but generally we would use that as a follow-up, as an actually attacking technique, using the block purely and simply as a separate attack. The kata now goes into the same block, the ashiyuki, the leg block, followed by the otoshi uraken uki. Okay. Now it offers you an alternative counter. In the kata, we make mikazuki geri, the crescent kick, in which we try and meet the hand. That's very important, that the hand doesn't drop. And we meet it, and then we descend into a reverse punch, delivered very low. My teacher, Sensei Kaze, always suggests that although we kick in the kata high, this is in fact a sweep. And the sweep is extremely effective once you've blocked, because in the first set of movements, we chase, we make the block, and then we chase. It presumes that your opponent will back off. The kata then says, okay, Maybe your opponent won't back up. Maybe your opponent will stay. We have an alternative solution. We throw the sweep, we take our opponent down, we punch. Now the problem once we're down here is maybe our opponent is very alert and they may come back with a kick. So the kata from that position teaches you to cover. And at this position we move back into the cat stance. Now it's very important we make the cat stance that we don't open the knees, because we're trying to protect the groin. What we must try and do is pull with the hips and keep the knees together so the actual knees come very close, simultaneously blocking. The other thing which we must try and do when we're doing the kata is not to move the foot and then the hands. We've got to a little bit cheat. We pull back the punching hand first, so at the moment we pull back the leg, it's a simultaneous action, covering the groin with the knee, with the hands. Again, it's a principle that you can use any time when you're sweeping. You may sweep, you may counter, but there's nothing to stop your opponent throwing a kick from the floor. A downed opponent is still a dangerous opponent. The kata's teaching that principle. Again, the flexibility comes into it. So you, while you're delivering the kata, must consider what you're doing. How the kata is teaching you a lesson for combat, as well as a lesson about controlling your body. When you look at kata, you must look at it not only as an exercise to pass your gradings, win competitions. Kata is giving us a message. It's a bit like Stonehenge. For a long period of time, everybody thought Stonehenge was purely a Druid temple. Then, of course, somebody in the 50s comes along and says to us, no, it's a fantastic astronomical clock. The kata's the same. It's not just a series of movements. It's rather like Stonehenge. It's giving us a lesson which we can use, a lesson about tactics, condition, distance, application under differing conditions. Hongetsu Seishan is designed for this kind of combat on a slippery surface in which you are using the inner energy from your body to brush everything away. A lesson which you're going to need later on when you come to fight. The kata is in fact a fight. The idea of kata should be, a perfect kata should be like a fight. Also, if you take this point of view, a perfect fight should be like a kata. It should have the beauty and essence of kata, whilst still retaining that element of combat. The two are not separate, they're rather like two sides of a coin. Both connected and yet separate. Kumite should become kata, kata should become kumite. We call a technical hiccup in the traditional karate trade. Old fat man's got a bad knee. Right, once more, ready? Ready? Ungets.
While George Godfrey was Steve's top fighter, Steve has said that his most technically correct student is Sandy Hopkins. He didn't restrict his teaching to a small, select group of champions. He enjoyed travelling and visited most parts of the world to spread the gospel of traditional karate-do. While Steve was first and foremost a student of Shotokan karate, he was interested in all forms of traditional Okinawan and Japanese styles. As a way of bringing together practitioners of all traditional forms, Steve, Julian Mead and I formed the Butokukai of Great Britain in the early 1990s, later joined by Mike Bernand and Derek Ridgway. The aim of the Butokukai is simple: to learn from one another and to work together to promote the values of traditional karate. It was Steve's ambition to learn all the traditional kata of Shurite, a task he had almost completed before he died. He wanted his senior students to do the same thing, a legacy which is continuing. Although Steve once described himself as a reluctant teacher, there is no doubt that he had the ability to motivate a class of karate students to a high degree. His sheer enthusiasm was infectious, and his ability to actually do what he was teaching always commanded respect. Even after his 2 hip replacement operations, he was willing and able to push himself in training and teaching. Steve's insistence on practical, realistic techniques can be seen in this footage of him teaching in Belgium. By using skillful body shifting and precise timing, he's able to neutralize the kicking attacks delivered by his 2 students, Dave Wilkins and Ken Hassel. Once in close, he uses sweeps and punches to keep them off balance, so preventing them from effectively counter-attacking. It is interesting to note how Steve relates the sparring techniques back to the methods found in the kata. This is typical of Steve's approach to karate, and was one of the reasons why he was so popular as a teacher. He was able to bring the kata to life and explain them in a clear way to a wide range of students. He helped many karate students to the awareness that kata are not dead, sterile drills, but a valuable archive of effective fighting techniques which, if properly understood and researched, can be of tremendous value in combat. Steve had no patience for the pompous or the pretentious. He was at his best in front of a class of enthusiastic students who were able to respond to his knowledge and sense of humour. Steve's death in February 1995, at the age of 47, came as a tremendous shock to all of his friends and students. It is hard for all of us to accept that Steve is gone. Somehow, I expect him to turn up in the dojo, full of energy and plans for the future. Steve was once asked what he regarded as the most important attributes of a student. He said, "Attitude, definitely the attitude. A good student is one who is always willing to listen and learn, accept the fact that they can be wrong, and respect the way of karate. If they are brought up in the correct way, they will understand that winning is not the most important thing, but that loyalty and having an open mind are far more desirable attributes. I think that never giving up, always persevering, and trying to do your best throughout your life is the most important thing that karate training has taught me."